Hello, hello, everybody. We are about to start. So, welcome to this presentation. My name is Gunnar Cedersund, that you see down here, and I will talk about digital twins that follow you through life. So, if that's what you're here to listen to, then you're in the right place. Otherwise, there's probably some other lecture that you were meaning to go to. So I will talk now for some 40 minutes about this topic, or I will talk maybe half an hour, and then there will be 10 minutes in the end for questions, if you have questions. So I will build up this slide, so I will go back here and build things from the beginning. So the first thing I want to say is that we need new models for health. So our healthcare systems are having more and more problems because we have more and more that are elderly, and we move around and exercise less and less, so our health is also worse. And if you just take the first of those, that we are more that are elder, within a 10-year period, we'll have 50% more that are 80 or above. And those already account for 50% of the healthcare cost. So just that factor alone is an increase of around 25% or 100 billion kroner. And that's a lot of money. Just to sort of put it in proportion, I live in Linköping, so my region is Östergötland, and we went 1 billion back, and that led to major cuts and sort of major changes. So if you scale that up to 100, then you realize that there are big changes happening. So we need to restructure healthcare. We need to rethink it, and that's what this M4 Health, models for health. We need new ways of thinking about health. And it also stands for something else. And that has to do with the main thing that I will talk about, which is a kind of AI models that can help to produce this change. And the type of AI model that I will talk about. And it's not the typical machine learning that you typically hear about. We do that also, but we primarily do something that can be summarized in 4 M's. Mechanistic, multi-level, multi-timescale, and multi-species models. And by the end of this presentation, you will understand all of these 4 M's and how they can be sort of used both to transform healthcare in general, but also by you in your everyday life. Within not that many years, maybe 2 years or something like this, this thing that I will talk about will be an open available product that you all can buy, and then you can have this technology that I will present in just a couple of seconds. So these type of models, they are created a little bit like when you lay a puzzle. You have different pieces, you have some data, you have some knowledge, you have some other data, and you have some theory, and you try to put those together. And this is what I and my research group have been doing for around 20 years. And this has led to something that we call digital twins, that you see symbolically here. So digital twins is something that's used all over the place. It basically means a copy of something or a computer model of something. But here we take it back to the original meaning, which is a twin, like a twin sister, or a twin brother. It's someone that looks like you and that has roughly the same body. It's just that it's digital. So here you see a symbolic digital twin of a person where you can look inside. You can see the liver, you can see the heart, and you can see the blood vessels. And more than that, you can bring this twin with you throughout life. So when you, for instance, go and exercise or play some sports, you can simulate and you can see your twin do the exercises that you're about to do. And you can see what happens in the different organs when this happens. And you can not only see it as it happens, but also if you would do it for like half a year, what would happen to your body? Which muscles would grow? How would your weight change? How would your fat distribution inside the organs change? And even inside the cells, what would happen in terms of gene expression and so on? So that is something that can be used not only when you go to sports, but also in music, and you will see an example of that in the very end. In drug development, we collaborate a lot with AstraZeneca. In ordinary healthcare, in preventive healthcare, rehabilitation, things like yoga and elder care. So the idea is that you have computer copy of yourself. You have your own digital twin with you that follow you along this health journey from you go to school and all the way to elder care. And again, a digital twin is a copy of something, and it's here it's a copy of the whole body. This is something that has been researched for around 20 years. And now we have just recently started a spin-off company that turns this into a product as well, so people can start to use it. And this is done, the sort of core technology is owned by our own spin-off company called Sund, which is part of my last name. My name is Cedersund, but it also means healthy, for those of you who speak Swedish, which I guess is many of you. But it also is that you can do things in a sound way. And all of those are sort of connotations that we want to bring into this. And here you also see a digital twin of a tree, which is a cedar tree, which is the first part of my last name. So this is the logotype of our spin-off company. I'm a professor and leading two research groups, one at Øredev University and one in Linköping University. And my research group has another logo, which is this one. So here you see a box, but you see that you can look inside the box. And that means that we can see the processes as they happen. So if you get the prediction, it's not like with traditional machine learning that you just have to take it or leave it. Probably many of you have played around with ChatGPT, and you sort of probably often been impressed by how accurate it is and how much it knows. But sometimes you probably also notice that it's completely wrong. It makes up a person that doesn't exist, or a scientific citation that doesn't exist. And you cannot ask it if it's just made up or if it's something that it really knows. Because from its point of view, it's always doing the same. It takes a string as input and it generates another string as output. And the internal thing is always the same type of machinery, and it doesn't mean anything to look inside. But our models, because they are built based on the processes that happen in the body, you can look inside and you can see why you get a certain prediction. And you also get it with an uncertainty, because if you could ask ChatGPT, is this something that you are certain on, or is this something that you are just guessing? That would already help a lot, even though you don't know how it comes up with the answer. But you can't. But you can with our models, and I will show you how this is done. So, and with that said, I should also say that we do incorporate classical machine learning models and large language models and so on in our product and in our software development. So it's a sort of hybrid approach that we do. But the logotype is this one. So that's sort of the presentation in one slide. And now I will dive into this in more and more detail to make you understand how these twins have been built up and validated, and then also how we build the software and how we're going to test it, and how it's going to sort of come up in society, and also in the end how all of you can interact with it in different ways, either as developers or as test users or as customers or partners or something like this. Okay, so that's what's going to happen. So before I get into all of this, I just want to say this is my research group. And those are the ones that have developed the mathematical models. And here are also some medical doctors and some cell biologists that are testing all of these predictions and sort of building the knowledge. But in reality, that comes to a large extent from many, many, many collaborators that are distributed all over the world and that contribute with data and knowledge that has gone into this twin. And on a variety of different topics. What happens when you get diabetes? What happens in the liver? What happens when you get a stroke or high blood pressure? Or what happens in the brain and the immune system and so on. So different collaborations here, and different people in the group are working with these different aspects. And this is the software development team. So this is now on the commercial side much more, even though some are co-employed. And it's some UX developers. We have also one medical doctor and some healthcare coaches. This is Johan Holmsäter. He's the guy who started Friskis and Svettis back in the 80s. Yes. Now you've seen them, so now I sort of said it's not me who've done all of this, it's them who've done it. I try to sort of have the visions and inspire them to do it and attract the money. So now let's dive into this a little bit more. We need new models for health. That's the first thing I said. What is the current model for health? Well, it's sort of very centralized. You have patients that come to the hospital when they need to come to the hospital, which is as seldom as they can, typically. You don't want to go to the doctor. And the data that's generated is typically not very well integrated, even within the same hospital, and even less so between hospitals, between countries, and from the hospital to other parts of society. It's sort of very siloed. And this is the system that's sort of becoming increasingly overburdened, and that is increasingly not up to the task because we don't have staff and we don't have money. So the idea is to give everybody a digital twin, and this is tuned based on data, of course. And here we have a GDPR data broker that uses the fact that according to GDPR, you can ask for a copy of lots of data. Everyone that stores data about you. So journal data, that's what's in the hospitals. Sensor data, that's all of these activity clocks and apps that collect data about you all the time. And then qualitative data, that's basically your own observations and things that you say that are not quantitative in nature. Or a copy of all of this data. You have a right to get that. And we have built up this type of APIs that with one push of a button gets this into your own private vault. And this technology has been developed by a partner company of us. They spent around 75 million kroner on developing an ultra-safe way of doing this. And this data then updates the digital twin. So anytime new data comes in, your own copy, your own digital twin is updated. And then in that way, you bring your twin with you to all of these actors that are not only healthcare actors, but when you go to the gym and have a coach there or a personal trainer, or when you go exercising yourself, or when you talk to your relatives, or when you have a yoga session, and so on. And you see here that it's the patient or the individual, who is often not even a patient yet, is in the middle. So you have a continuous ongoing dialogue with your own body, as it is now, but also as it will be in some 10, 20 years. So you can have an ongoing dialogue. The train that I'm on, what's it going to take me to? What's my body going to look like? And how is my life going to look like in 10 years or 20 years? You can talk to your twin about that. And this is part of a transformation of a new model for health, patient-specific P4 medicine. So these 4 Ps is predictive medicine. You predict that something happens before it happens. Preventive, which has to do with this predictive ability. You can prevent the disease before it's happened much, much easier than you can cure it. And it's personalized because everybody has their own digital twin. And it's participatory, meaning that it's really the individual that is at the driver's seat of their own health. It's not the doctor that makes decision and then you maybe follow it or maybe not. It's you who have all of the knowledge, and you might talk to doctors, you might talk to your health coach, you might talk to your friends or to your support group, but you are the one much more that is sort of at the heart of this and is participating actively in your own health planning. So that's a completely reversal of the current model of health. And here you see that there are many, many more actors that can be brought in, meaning that we have a sort of ecosystem of actors that have many more different types of funding sources, payment models, and that can sort of take over or help because we have this coordination, because they all have access. If the patient so wants, or the individual wants, they can give temporary access to any of these players that they think should have it for the time being. And therefore they have much more knowledge, and they can coordinate their actions in a much more easy way compared to this system where you have this silo problem. So that's the new model for health that hopefully is much more able to take on this sort of big transformation of healthcare that we need to undertake. Okay, so testing this idea, we are going to do a fairly big clinical study that starts next summer, so in half a year from now. And that will start in healthcare, doing something called a health dialogue. So health dialogue is something that you're invited to when you turn 40, 50, 60 or 70 years old. It's in most regions in Sweden. It's been decided, but the rollout is quite slow. But it's in principle something that's going to be a national thing. And when you're called to this and you accept it, then the first thing that happens is that you fill in a big form, and you also get some values. You take a blood sample, you take some blood pressure, and you do some measurements. And all of this will then be used not only as it is now to sort of create an aggregation of risk factors. So each row here is a different risk factor ranging between green and red, but also to populate your digital twin. So you can use your digital twin during the conversation of these 13 risk factors. So you can understand this one is almost red, and what is this risk factor? And you can look inside the body and understand more of it, and you can see what's going to happen if I don't care about this risk factor. How is it going to get worse over time? Why is this a risk factor? And if I change something in my life, how can I make this better? So that's sort of the first thing that we're going to test, if this step alone is better. But then the second step is these other actors. So here again, we have a program that comes from this guy, Johan Holmsäter, the guy who started Friskis and Svettis. He's a really cool guy. He brought it from an idea in his head to 500,000 participants or members of Friskis and Svettis in 6 years. It was in the early 80s. So he has since then been developing coaching programs and health programs that we are now bringing into this app as well. So all of the knowledge and all of the studies that he has sort of led in scientific studies, but also with companies and so on, is sort of all of that knowledge is going into the app so that you can have all of that knowledge to follow up the goals that you set when you are talking to the nurse or the medical doctor at the healthcare center or the vårdcentral. Those goals you can follow up, and the app will remind you, and there will be other people that also have a digital twin, and you can talk to them over the app and support each other and help coach each other, and you have regular meetings, and hopefully this thing and this thing will together be much better than the health conversation in itself, which is already quite good, actually. And what we hope to see is improved motivation to do all of the things that they talk about here, and therefore improved behavior, and therefore lowering these risk factors, bringing them from red to green, and therefore having fewer diseases in society, fewer heart attacks, fewer strokes, and so on. So this will be the first big study. So we'll have 400 people that will undergo various versions of this, and we'll compare it to 300 controls, and then hopefully it will work much better for them. And if so, we've also certified this as a product, and then we can start to spread it so everybody can buy it. So if we zoom in a little bit on the app, this is the beginning of the process where you sort of answer questions. How often do you eat fast food? And then you say seldom, or once a week or twice a week. And then all of these questions that you answer, and also other information if you have it, is summarized in a health report where you have different factors that again range between green and red depending on how they are. So this is both physical things, psychological factors, social factors like how big is your social network, and socio-demographics, what's your income, and so on. These are also risk factors, and even existential things. So all of these are separate, independent risk factors. And then you can simulate different scenarios. If I do nothing, if I just keep living as I do, what will happen? But if I change things, if I start to take a walk 30 minutes, some certain number of weeks, a week, what will happen? And then you push simulate, and then you get the outcome. Well, then you will lower your blood pressure with something. So this is sort of the first things that you try out at the health conversation, when you are sort of understanding your risk factors and also understanding what you can do and setting goals. So the question then comes, how can you do this type of simulations? How can you know that you can trust these type of simulations? How were they developed? And that's basically what I've been doing as a scientist. So let's understand that. And first, let's understand why you can't use only machine learning to answer these type of questions and to do these type of simulations. I already talked about it from some perspectives, but let's add a few more. So typically what you do when you do a clinical study is that you look at some risk factors in a population, maybe 10,000 people or something like this, and then you wait some years and you maybe look at the risk factors again, or you see which of them had a stroke. And then you can develop some statistical model that can predict the likelihood of you having a stroke given a certain distribution of risk factors. So that's typically what medical science is doing. But the problem is that while you can get the average sort of development over time, and you can even include some covariates to do some degree of personalization, you don't know and you don't collect the type of information that really makes this personalized. So here we have this red guy here. He's going from being the top to the bottom. And in this particular case, which is a hypothetical scenario, but this happens all the time, this person changed something in his lifestyle. Maybe he started running, or maybe he lost a lot of weight, or maybe he started to take a medication, or he got depressed, or whatever. And then that is the reason why he's changing a lot. And this type of information is typically missing from this type of clinical studies. So you don't know this information. This type of information is also different variables. It's not the same risk factors. It's what you do in between, and that you can measure with other variables. Things that change continuously during a day, for instance. These things that you measure with these wearables, these other risk factors. And that means that you can't combine these variables and these other variables either practically because they come from completely different sources, or in the same model because they are not measured in the same person. So therefore you need to solve both of those problems. And the first problem, just to get the data together, is this personal data vault, where you take a copy of all of the different data that you have, and you put that in your personal data vault. And this is, again, using GDPR to your advantage, and then this allows you to update the twin. So that solves sort of how you aggregate the different data sources. If you would want to bring all of this data into the healthcare system, that would have lots and lots and lots and lots of complications, both legally and ethically and permission-wise. So that's not a viable solution. But this is a viable solution because GDPR allows you to get the copy of all of this data into the same place. But then you need to analyze this data in this hybrid approach, where you combine the mechanistic digital twins with the machine learning approaches. So this continuous data, this new data, this is brought together with knowledge to develop these mechanistic simulations of what happens when you change your lifestyle continuously over time. Images and omics, so when you measure all your genes, for instance, that can go in both places. And then you have this cohort data, the traditional data, that goes still into the machine learning models as it did before. So this allows you to bring these data into the mix, and then we have these different models talking to each other in a hybrid architecture. So that's what you need to analyze this combination of data. So that's sort of the basic idea of what type of models are there. So now let's start to look at the actual models. And I'll speed up a little bit now because it's sort of a little bit more into science. But I want to give the feeling that these things have been tested a lot. So first, we have developed over these 20-something years models for all of the main organs in the body, the blood flow and the liver and the brain and so on. We published scientific papers, so these are references to peer-reviewed papers, both for the individual organs, some mathematical models for the individual organs, for their combination into a general physiological model, and for their combination into patient-specific models. And these patient-specific digital twins that goes into these apps that I will show later. So let's start from the outside, what you see when you interact with the twin. So here we have the twin in the middle and we have the different organs here. And I should also say that we are the only ones in the world that are doing this type of multi-organ models. So there are lots of groups in the world that are doing one organ or another organ, but we are the only ones that are doing this combination of all the organs into an interconnected body. So one of our collaboration partners is working with the brain and the face. So behind this face, you can talk to this. This is an AI, so you can talk to it. And there is facial muscles behind the face. And behind those muscles, there is a brain. So you can also see which areas in the brain are active when you're talking to it. If it's emotionally upset, or if you're exercising or sleeping, different areas of the brain are active. You can zoom into the heart, see the blood pumping. So this is another group that's doing that we're collaborating with. And you can look inside the muscles and you can see how they create forces that together with the skeleton create movements. So this is the digital twin of me doing a little dance routine here. But this could also be some exercise in the gym, for instance, or some rehabilitation exercise. And the final thing I want to show you is when you zoom into the liver. So here you see this white thing here shrinking. So if we take it from the beginning, here it's big and here it's shrinking. So that's a fat droplet inside a little part of the liver. And if you look in a microscope, and you could look over 2 weeks in the same place in the liver. It would look something like this. And this happens when you change your diet. So because there is metabolic reactions underlying here, when you change to this LCHF diet, low carbohydrate, high fat diet. Even though you eat more fat, you will actually consume more fat, and that will mean that fat disappears from the liver, which is a thing that drives diseases in the liver and also in other places. So this is sort of what you see. It's a visualization interface, and it's different types of interfaces that are sort of combined into one. But underlying all of these changes is equations. So how are these equations developed? Well, we start with hypotheses that comes from knowledge and from papers, talking to our experts and collaborators, and data. And we convert these hypotheses, this is how this works, into ordinary differential equations, typically. And then we tune the unknown parameters here to data. And if we can't make the model behave like the data, it means that the hypothesis was wrong. Some mechanism, some reaction, some interaction, some regulation is missing or is erroneously formulated. So then we need to reformulate it, and we try again, and hopefully eventually we come up here, so we have now something that can describe existing data. Then we see, can we predict new data? And if we can correctly predict new data that we then measure, that we then collect, and we do that a couple of times, then we bring this sub-model for the liver or for the heart or something else, or for what the drug is doing to some part of the cell. Then we bring that to the big picture, and then we can use it to simulate. For instance, what happens if you take a drug? And this is where we also add these machine learning models to calculate statistical properties like risk. So here we see a simulation, which is the line, and data, which are the dots, for healthy controls, people with type 2 diabetes, and also this simulated improvement. When you take the drug, it goes from the red situation towards the healthy blue situation. So it's basically understanding the mechanism, doing basic science, but then bringing that into these interconnected things that goes into the apps and that can help society. So that's sort of how this works. So if we zoom now, and now we are really in the smallest detail of the digital twin. So here we have insulin coming to the boundary, to the cell membrane of a cell, binding to the receptor that sits on this cell membrane, leading to a phosphate group coming to it. So each of these are reactions and corresponding to different terms in the equations. And this particular model describing this process, how insulin activates the receptor and the next protein. It took around 5 years to develop, and we tested it 5 different times. Can it correctly predict new experiments 5 times? And that was published in 2010. Then we went on in 2013 to do the big system here, which is how this leads to altered glucose uptake. How that goes wrong in type 2 diabetes. And along the way here, we have collected lots and lots of data. So let's just take one of those data to have a look at it. So here we look at this insulin receptor and the phosphorylation, which is how active it is. And we give insulin to the cell, so this phosphorylation, the activation goes up, and then it goes down, and it reaches some kind of steady state here. And the data that comes from measuring on the cell, that's the red error bars, and the simulation with the twin for the cell here is the line. And the uncertainty, I said we have an uncertainty, so you know, is this a well-determined thing or is it just guessing? Here is quite certain, so the uncertainty here, that's the gray area, that's quite small. So that's part of what happens inside, in this case, a fat cell. And then we bring that into the whole body models that have the fat cells being part of the fat tissue, which is talking to other organs like the muscle and the kidneys and the intestines and the pancreas and so on. And then we can simulate things that has to do with this organ-organ crosstalk. So for instance, what happens when you eat a meal, the glucose goes up and then it goes down, and the glucose uptake goes up and down, now in the fat tissue. And here again, the agreement between the data is quite good. And it's actually so good that the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration in the US, has said that this model is not perfect, but it's so good that you can use it instead of animals when you certify new insulin pumps. So you save around $100 million each time you certify a new insulin pump by using this model instead of dogs, which is what you used before. And this is in turn part of this whole body level where you have things like disease development. So here you see that these are processes that happens within seconds and minutes. Here is hours, and here it's months and years and even decades. So here we have the multi-time scale. The multi-level is the whole body down to the intracellular level. And it's mechanistic because it's building on these processes. And it's multi-species because we have corresponding models also for other organisms. So let's take one more example. So that now we zoomed in on the fat cell. Now let's zoom in on the liver. So here, the old model, the one that's approved by the FDA, is only this gray area here. It's only describing the crosstalk between glucose and insulin. Now we zoom in on the liver. And here we have intracellular reactions. We published this only 2 years ago. So this was trained on some data, describing how much glucose the liver produces and how much glycogen. And it was validated on some other data. These people have type 2 diabetes, this does not. And then we wanted to predict something fundamentally new. So in this case, no data had us fasting for 2 days and then eating something. So here we did an extreme example. We had fasting 2 days, and then we drank only protein. And we looked at how much glucose do we have in the blood or in the plasma. The previous model, the one approved by the FDA, says basically nothing happens because this is such an extreme example, and you need the liver to understand this. But the new model could say, well, it should be so that even though you only drink protein, because of these intracellular reactions where the liver can actually produce glucose, you will see a peak in the glucose in the blood that's produced by the liver, and then it will go down after around 1.5 hours. And the dots here was the test that we did after we had that prediction. So first we did the prediction, and then we did the experiments to see if it was correct. So that sort of shows that we can predict something fundamentally new because we understand the processes, we understand what's going on. And that's what machine learning, again, cannot do. It cannot produce fundamentally new type of predictions. So now you sort of understand what's inside the twins, how they are built up. Let's now go into the more eHealth type of things. So we go beyond just showing data, communicating with others. We go beyond black box machine learning, where we don't have any mechanistic understanding, and it's hard to generalize to new type of data, but we have these digital twins there. And this is part of a big EU project that I'm coordinating. I have around 6 million euro to test this in 8 hospitals in 6 countries all across Europe. And these type of predictions that I talked about. Here we have a person 40 years old coming to a health conversation in the primary healthcare center at the vårdcentral. And we see one scenario where he eats 400 kilocalories more, and then the weight will go up, we can simulate here. And if we compare the red point with the blue point, we can do a meal simulation. And we see that here, insulin is much lower because the pancreas has basically broken down. Glucose is much higher because you have type 2 diabetes. And then we compare this with another scenario where we exercise a little bit more and eat a little bit less. The weight will go down, and even though you're 40 years older, the meal response will be almost identical. And then because we have this hybrid architecture, we can simulate what's the difference in risk between these two scenarios. And the assumption here is that by seeing this for yourself in your own digital twin, it will help to motivate and understand and hopefully also give better sort of compliance to treatments. So the first app that we developed, or just a prototype of an app you see here. So here you see some values. It's quite small, so I will just tell you that here is a person called Gunnar. He has high blood pressure, 145 or 110. So he needs to take blood pressure medication. So let's do that simulation. Let's have the twin take the blood pressure medication for 2 years and then stop, and then see the effect of stopping. So we program that in. We click run simulation. It's sent to the backend where the simulations are run, and then it's sent back to the phone or the computer where you have your app. And here you see the effect of the intervention. Systolic blood pressure goes down, risk of a stroke goes down. And here you stop taking it, and then you see it keeps going up, but it's still lower. So the effect is sustained to some extent, but if you keep taking it, it's sort of better and better. So this is good if you have, or like you have a sort of engineering type of background of some kind, you're used to looking at curves. Most people, or many people are not, so they need something simpler. And this is why we developed this avatar approach, where we take a face scan to make it look like an individual, and then we visualize, so you can see yourself do the exercises. And you can zoom in on an organ, so you make the skin translucent, you can zoom in on an organ and see what's happening. And instead of seeing a curve that the weight is changing, you can actually see the weight changing on your body. And this is what we think will be applicable to the people that are not used to looking at curves. So, time is up, and let's do a summary. So, we had this research project starting out with this thing that goes beyond AI and machine learning to these hybrid approaches that leads to this world-unique, only ones in the world that has this multi-organ digital twins, which is the basis for this spin-off company, which has these people. And here, if you want to interact with us, we are rapidly expanding. Last year we had 1 employee, now we have, you saw it's like 15 or something. So we are very interested in UX, UI, and also software developers in general. Possible customers, if you have a company, maybe you have an HR department, maybe you want to have this for your employers or for your employees, and there can be other type of customers as well. And also, if you are a company that develops your own apps, you can use our backend and have that talk to your own game or your own eHealth app or your own sensor or whatever it is. And also you can follow me on social media and sign up to be a beta tester or to be part of our clinical study and have lots of measurements to really characterize your health. So, final thing. I said in the end that I would talk about that this is not only in healthcare and those type of things, but it's really you going anywhere in society. You can bring your twin. So let's take one of those examples. Here is a music dance example. So here you see me playing piano. And this is one of the best ballet dancers in the world. She performed as a soloist in Carnegie Hall several times, their own choreography. So we developed this choreography together about what happens in the music. But a little bit later in the same choreography, there are digital twins that are part of the dance performance. And here they are in a projector, but we're working on an augmented reality solution where everybody can see their own digital twin, even though there are 2,000 people in the audience. So let's zoom in on this a little bit. So here, this is a digital twin of the dean of the medical faculty. This is the CEO of a big spin-off company in Linköping. And here comes a digital twin of me that then are dancing in this dance performance. And if you have your own digital twin there, you can see yourself do the dancing, but you can also see what happens in the body. And you can zoom back in time and say, what would my twin have had to do to be able to do all of this in terms of strengthening themselves and becoming more flexible and so on. So while doing something completely different, going to a concert or playing a game, you have your own avatar, you can learn about your body and therefore really have an ongoing dialogue with your health, and you learn about your health and your body all the time. So that was my presentation. Now I'm open for questions. Yes?
I would imagine it takes quite a lot of computing power.
Yeah, but not that much actually. If you do these really detailed simulations, it will. Spatially resolved simulations take a long time, and then we send it to some supercomputer cluster. Let's see if we can bring this down. Okay, but most of it is just ordinary differential equations, and those are very rapid. So you simulate within less than a second.
So even if you were to run it in an app, in a phone, or whatever, eventually, because I can imagine that's quite powerful.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's always run on the server. Yeah, because of IP protection also. Okay, it seems like our time is up. So if you want, you can talk to me afterwards. Thank you, everybody.